Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Friendly Neighborhood Comic Book Vault. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
And Dan is here with me to review the 5-issue miniseries Spider-Man by Brian Michael Bendis. And, Dan, let's jump right into it, shall we? This is the, by the way, here's my copy. I got the cool variant cover.
Oh, did you?
Of issue 1, yeah, that was only sent to, like, the top 100 comic book stores or something.
Oh, wow.
I think it was, I don't know what it was. Because Elite Comics, quick plug for them, is the store that I go to here in Kansas City, and they're one of the top 100 retailers.
Wow, that's awesome.
So they always get this really cool stuff. So anyway, I just thought I would share. But anyway, so this, of course, is the first crossover between the 616 universe and the Ultimate Universe. And the first question I have for you, Dan, is did you think this was a good idea or not, even before you actually got to read it?
I didn't think it was a bad idea. I could definitely see the potential of putting Peter Parker and Miles Morales in the same story, because that obviously would have a lot of ramifications for Miles' character based on what we know about him in the Ultimate book. I think we talked a lot about that when we reviewed that book, but the way it was executed, it just didn't do what I would have liked it to have done. Not that it did anything that defied my expectations in like a necessarily positive way. Like, there were some great scenes in here that I liked, but I don't think Bendis had a story to tell. That was my main impression of it.
Yeah, that's my big complaint about it too, and I want to start right out by saying I'm going to make no bones about this. This is not. I did not dislike this as much as I have disliked some other Spider-Man stories that we have recently reviewed. I'm going to go as far, by the way, to even say, even though in some other videos I have said I don't like this series, reading it together, I think I liked it more than I did in singles. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't cringe. I didn't enjoy reading this, but there's nothing here really story-wise. I want to read something, if you don't mind, Dan.
Sure, go for it.
That's written at the end of this. I don't know if you looked at this, but at the very end of the first issue, just before you get to the letters page, mm-hmm. There's this page right before that says "When Webs Collide," and there's this little note written by senior editor Mark. Is it Panencia or Panencia? Do you know?
I'm not sure. No.
But anyway, he says. I won't read the whole thing, but there's this thing that he read that he wrote that I was kind of surprised by, because I didn't buy it, and I want to know what your take is on it. He says, "You're here for the very first meeting between the original and much beloved Peter Parker and this century's newest superhero sensation, Miles Morales. The first time the barrier has been broken between Marvel and the Ultimate line. While many have speculated and often dreamed of this moment, it took the 50th anniversary of Marvel's flagship hero and the right story to make it happen. You don't just knock down the walls between realities for nothing." It's like they're trying to oversell it.
Yeah, they tried to make it a lot more self-important than I think the book is aware that it was marketed to be. I don't know. As a Spider-Man 50th anniversary thing, it kind of disappointed me. Like, it's definitely not terrible, but like I was saying before, I think my favorite scene in the entire book is the scene between Peter, Aunt May, and Gwen talking.
That's what I figured you'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a really emotional scene. You get to see Aunt May sort of seeing that all of her teachings paid off at least somewhere, and Gwen gets to see the man that she, really loved and lost all grown up. I mean, it's a cool experience for both of them to see that, and I thought it was cool of Bendis to sort of give us that experience and then have Mary Jane have the complete opposite reaction to him, where she just cries and runs away because she can't deal with it. I thought that was a really tender scene, really heartbreaking for the two characters to not see Mary Jane get to meet Peter while he's in the universe. And that was great, but Miles Morales didn't really have anything to do in this story. No. And I don't think the relationship between him and Peter was developed enough to have it matter as much as the book acts like it does at the end.
Well, I want to go back, because you mentioned a whole bunch of stuff. I want to go back for a minute to what you were saying about Mary Jane. That was the one moment where, and this isn't necessarily a problem, that was the one moment where I, as not a big Ultimate reader, found myself going, I bet this holds more emotional weight for people that have been reading Ultimate since the beginning.
It definitely does.
I don't know anything about Mary Jane in this universe besides what I've seen in a token few issues here and there, because like I've read like the first Venom arc and a few things like that, and she pops up, but I don't really know what exactly her relationship was with Peter Parker, considering Gwen Stacy and considering Shadowcat and stuff like that. So.
Mary Jane was his girlfriend from the beginning in Ultimate, and Bendis sets them up as meant to be. They're the couple that always, when Peter has another girlfriend, he'll always go back to MJ and stuff like that.
Okay.
All the other girls are basically rebound girls in one way or another. Not that Peter's acts sort of shallow about it, but it's sort of him trying to get over Mary Jane, and he's never able to. So.
Yeah, so I mean, that makes a lot more sense. But while not really knowing what exactly that was about, I did find myself thinking, okay, well, this is important. This is a place where it's important for somebody in the Ultimate Universe. Whereas a lot of this book really seemed, and I was very surprised by this, honestly, considering the sheer amount of stories I've read where two universes collide like this. I was really surprised that so much of the time was just spent on characters going, wait, there's an alternate universe? What? And everybody's minds being so incredibly blown by it.
Yeah, and it's weird, too, because you have everyone besides Nick Fury and Nick Fury basically sort of reacting to this alternate universe thing in such a surprised way, and then you have him who's like, yeah, we've known about it the whole time, and they use him knowing about it to explain away them knowing things about the technology and stuff to get the plot sort of moving. So it's really weird that they spend so much time with everyone sort of explaining things about the differences between the two universes, where you could just use Nick Fury to do that because they set him up as knowing everything anyway. I
found myself wondering, besides just that this is something to do for the 50th anniversary, as far as story-wise, as far as for these characters, besides a couple cool token moments that we're talking about, besides really affecting minor characters, I wondered what the point was of this. I really couldn't get my mind around it. Because like you said, Miles doesn't get a whole lot to do. And sure, it's a big deal for him to get to meet Peter Parker, but really the best way I could sum all of this up for these two characters is just, it was a treat. It was like watching two characters going to a festival together, you know?
Right. It was definitely just the novelty of the concept.
Yeah.
Majorly.
It was all novelty.
Yeah, and
for the most part.
You were talking about Miles not getting much to do, and it's to the point where he just stands around while Peter's doing things, and then at the end of the story, they're like, oh, yeah, you get my blessing for being Spider-Man. Like, they have that initial classic Marvel fight where two characters don't know each other, and they're freaked out, and they fight each other.
I didn't like.
You didn't like that?
Can I just say, I didn't like it. Yeah, well, part of it was I knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, maybe it's not fair, but the reason I didn't like it was because I don't feel like that's how Peter Parker would react to being in an alternate universe.
I kind of thought that too, especially since he thought that Miles was 13 and proceeded to try to beat him up.
Immediately just attacks him. And it's weird because every time the book would do something that I kind of cried foul on, Bendis would acknowledge it, and it was frustrating because it was like, okay, he knows he's doing this thing that's bothering me, and he's trying to make it work. Like he would go, I mean, look, the story, it's not incompetent. It's just not really working for me because he would go, during that fight, like, Spider-Man just attacks Miles Morales. He's just, oh no, something I don't understand, I'm going to attack it. And then Bendis has this bit where Miles says, hey, dude, you attacked me, I don't even know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but why did he do that? I mean, like, he thinks for a while, and even into the next issue, thinking that perhaps this entire alternate city is a mirage made by Fishbowl Head. I always like to call Mysterio Fishbowl Head.
Yeah.
And I appreciate, by the way, that Spider-Man did that here too, because I always like it when he calls him Fishbowl Head. But anyway, where he thinks that maybe Mysterio even created this entire city, But, like, if he thinks that it's all an illusion, would he attack it?
No, not necessarily.
All of that...
Especially since he's dealt with Mysterio numerous times over his career.
It's just big... It was just a big contrivance to get that fight in there. And you knew how it was going to end, and who cares?
Yeah, I mean...
That's why I didn't like it.
Yeah, I kind of cried foul on that, too. And it sort of played into what I was thinking when I was reading Peter Parker in here. He came off, which is maybe to Bendis' credit, he felt a lot like Dan Slott's Spider-Man to me.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he did.
Now, see, I didn't feel that way except for a few token moments like that one where I thought that he was just kind of reacting to things. But I thought Bendis had a way better voice for him than Slott.
He does have a better voice for him. Like, I wasn't going to say, like, Dan Slott Spider-Man now. I'm talking, like, Spider Island Dan Slott.
Oh, okay. Slott Spider-Man that you like.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, there was something about him, like, the way he was telling jokes and stuff. I think Bendis definitely took a little bit of that voice because Peter was a little zany compared to what I've seen him write Peter Parker in the Ultimate books. It wasn't the same characterization.
Yeah.
It was consistent with what's going on in the Amazing books right now, I thought, and I thought that was good.
Well, but perhaps he was also overcompensating a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I felt like, while I liked the voice for him, I felt like the internal monologuing was a bit overblown.
Yeah, I thought so too.
I tell you, and this is just me, and you never want to review something by rewriting a book. So I'm not saying that what I don't like about the book is that they didn't do it my way, but I want to suggest that I really think that this book might have gone better if it had been the entire polar opposite of this, and if it had been Miles Morales in 616, because. I don't know why, but I just wasn't really all that intrigued by seeing 616 Peter Parker, because the whole thing is from his perspective. We don't get into Miles Morales' head. The whole thing is from Peter Parker's perspective. I think the book would have had more emotional weight if it had been us watching Miles Morales having to react to and deal with things in Peter Parker's universe. If the book had been from his perspective.
I don't know. I don't think you could have had the same sort of emotional moments with him going into the 616 universe, because Miles doesn't have really a stake in that world, really. I mean, you could maybe go in there and have him find, like, the 616 version of his parents and the Prowler his uncle that we've never met before, but having Peter go in and seeing younger versions of characters or people that he knows in his life and with Gwen that he's lost, I thought that was, that's what I figured the whole point of the thing would be. You know?
See, I don't know. I thought that was great for those characters. I didn't really see what it did for Peter Parker emotionally at all. I mean, in the moment, sure. But again, it was sort of like watching somebody go into a museum and be affected by museum pieces. Like, the reason I said that about Miles going into 616 is I don't think it all has to be that personal. The thing for the whole big thing for Miles, who, by the way, I felt like was much more affected by this whole experience than Peter was, even though he didn't get anything to do, was getting to meet the man who in every way should have been his mentor. And I think that what you do is you take Miles, you put him in 616, and you have our Peter Parker train him. I think that would have been a great story.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that brings up another good point. You have a story going on in Amazing Spider-Man recently with Spider-Man getting a sidekick.
Yeah!
I think this should have been that story.
Absolutely.
And even if you wanted to use both of those characters, you could contrast them, because at the end of the Alpha story that just finished, Alpha doesn't turn out to be a good sidekick at all. And Spider-Man's kind of like, yeah, I don't need a sidekick. And you could have Alpha sort of validate Miles in Peter's eyes in that way. If it was a crossover between the two books, I think that might have been a cool thing to do.
My bottom line is that for 5 issues, I mean, I felt like a lot more story could have been told in 5 issues.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, there's not really a story here. I mean, really, it's so simple. There's a contrived Mysterio plot so that these two characters can get together. If the whole point is to get them together, give them stuff to do as a duo.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
That's what I wanted to see.
I think the conceptual stuff going in with the Mysterio plot is cool. Because I don't know if you picked up on this or not, and I didn't pick it up when I was reading it, but when I went back and read it as a whole, I picked up on it, because it's not really exactly clear as to what Mysterio's deal is when I was reading it in issues, because it was so spaced apart month by month.
Me too, yeah.
But did you pick up that Mysterio in 616 and Ultimate Mysterio are the same person?
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
It sure seemed like that was the idea.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, and that's going to play into that's a huge part of what's going to play into my theory about the future of the book when we talk about it at the end of the video. But I thought that was a really cool idea.
I have a problem with it, though.
You did? Okay.
Well, no. I'm going to ask you if this is a problem, because maybe I'm not thinking about it right. But if the idea is that both of them, so are you saying the idea was that they were always the same Mysterio?
Yeah, like, because you know how he has those avatar things?
Yeah.
So Mysterio discovered technology to go into the Ultimate Universe before the series started, and back in Ultimate when Mysterio first appeared, that was the 616 Mysterio exploring the Ultimate Universe.
Right. The problem I have with that is that that's so long ago. Why did he choose now to do this?
Because Peter Parker Spider-Man died, and he found out who he was. Because Peter Parker's identity was released to the world.
And so it's not too long after Peter Parker died.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, fair.
I mean, that's another thing I'm going to talk about at the end of the video. But
sure. Yeah. That is really interesting. I wondered about that because when the Avatar was, looked like the other Mysterio, I wondered, but I didn't entirely pick up on it. That was a question I was going to ask you, so I'm glad I was right about that, because that seemed like a really cool idea, and I was like, ooh, I hope that's where they're going. That also makes it less of a big giant, oh my god, really moment at the end when you find out that that Mysterio's going to stay in the Ultimate Universe.
Yeah.
Apparently, he kind of, sort of has been there before, so.
Right, yeah. I was going to say some other things about this. I thought it was kind of weird how... You're still reading Ultimate, right? So you know how they introduced the web shooters in that book?
Hmm?
Why did they have him put on the web shooters? This is totally a nitpick. Why did they have him put on the web shooters in this book and play around with them and not give them there? And instead introduce them in a separate scene with Aunt May and Gwen in the Ultimate book.
Yeah, and not at the very least mention the fact that was in here. I feel like part of the problem I've got with this is I feel like it's completely disconnected. I mean, we're not referencing it in Ultimate at all.
Right, it's really weird. Like I said, you would think that
Vince is writing it.
Yeah, and you would think after this event, Miles meeting the person that he's taken up the legacy for. That would be something that he's thinking about constantly. I mean, yeah. I know, if I was him, that's what I'd be thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely, and trying to live up to that.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of been his dream since the beginning, and of course he knew he'd never be able to meet Peter Parker.
Right, and you think he'd be talking to Gank, his friend, like, oh, I met Peter Parker, and he's like, no way,
Yeah, and like, I don't believe you, there's not alternate universes, because apparently in this particular universe, if somebody finds out, they almost... like their heads almost explode.
Yeah.
That still really drives me crazy. I don't know. Maybe it's just because maybe it's just a perspective thing, because I've been reading comics for so long and I've been in science fiction for so long that I'm used to these sorts of stories, and so I want to get a move on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I expect, like, okay, in reality, right now in 2012, if I suddenly found out there were alternate universes, it would not take me 5 issues worth of time to get used to this idea.
Yeah.
Because I feel like in our modern day and age, if you've seen enough movies, this is a concept that is familiar to you.
Yeah.
The thing too is, in the Ultimate Universe, this is another one of those places where Bendis like calls attention to this issue I have, where he even has Nick Fury or somebody, I forget, say, yeah, this is weird, even though we've seen some other alternate universes before. The zombie universe crosses over into Ultimate.
That's true, and
honestly, 616 and Ultimate both have no reason to be surprised by alternate universes.
Right, and plus, I was just thinking about this too. I'm not sure how it works in the Ultimate Universe, and I'm kind of even shaky on how it was originally set in the 616 universe, but isn't Asgard supposed to be a sort of alternate dimension as well?
Yeah. Yeah, as far as I know.
Yeah, so Peter Parker, who's on the friggin' Avengers with Thor every issue of everything, is surprised that there's alternate dimensions when he's fighting side by side with a guy from one.
Yeah, and to be fair, the way they try to play it so that we can't complain about it, because really that's the only reason that you would, is just so that guys like us won't complain about it, is they say, well, we knew there were other dimensions, we just didn't know there were parallel ones. Oh. And I still cry foul because of Zombie.
Yeah, true.
Not only have we seen, I don't know if those guys necessarily saw that or not, but we know that the Fantastic Four knows about that, because that's the book that crossed into. You figure if they know about the zombie universe, they can't be that surprised by a universe that is parallel and is a little bit more like theirs, where everybody didn't get turned into zombies. Like, if we can deal with the whole universe turned into zombies,
yeah, just saying. True.
Hey, can I give you a really giant or silly nitpick?
Sure.
You did a nitpick. I'll do one even sillier.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I don't even think the web shooter thing is as much of a nitpick. There was a little reference that bugged me in one of the first couple issues of of the new Ultimate Spider-Man book, where, because I never understand the need to do this when you can reference a licensed thing without having to change it, as long as you're not like trying to sell it or something.
Yeah.
Called YouTube ViewTube in one of the early Ultimate Spider-Man books with Miles Morales, and then in here it's YouTube.
Yeah, that is weird. I didn't notice that.
Websites, is there a YouTube and a ViewTube? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, you made me think of speaking of nitpicks, you made me think of another one that I meant to mention when I was talking about my other nitpick before, and I'm gonna, it'll be interesting to see what you think about it.
Sure.
I was really annoyed with the fact that Bendis made a point to say that everything in the Ultimate Universe that he created was so much cooler than the 616 things. Peter Parker,
like, especially the suit.
Yeah, he's like, oh, why is your suit cooler than mine? And then everyone's always saying how much cooler Black Nick Fury is than 616 White Nick Fury. You know, the Samuel L. Jackson version, how much cooler that one is. I was like, I like both versions of the character.
Me too. I didn't like that moment. I didn't like either of those moments. I didn't really buy that Peter Parker would think that Miles' costume was that much cooler than his. Yeah. And I also wasn't real keen, although maybe it's kind of in his character to do this, but I wasn't real keen even on Ultimate Nick Fury when he finds out that the 616 Nick Fury is white. He says, oh, something like that's a shame. And I'm like,
yeah.
Or no, he says, sorry to hear that. I was like, ugh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Like, if I were writing that, I wouldn't really want to do something like that, because you couldn't get away with it the other way.
No,
you couldn't get away with white Nick Fury going, oh, Ultimate Nick Fury is black. Oh, what a shame. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I don't think that, because it doesn't work the other way.
Right.
I don't know. I don't really care for that.
Yeah, I didn't care for it either, and it's like
I don't think it's fair to 616.
It's not at all. I mean, we've seen how unfair they're going to treat him with the whole Nick Fury Jr. things. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, they're intruding on it that way.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, running up into the end of this, we're already almost 25 minutes in. Let's get to the ending. Can I just say that as much as I thought that this story was slow and, I mean, it was a fast read, but there's not enough story here, I freaking loved the ending.
Yeah?
I loved that last page.
Oh, yeah, where he looks up 616 Miles Morales in the corner.
I am a sucker for those kinds of cliffhangers.
Yeah, I really liked that, too.
That was really fun, and reading it together, it was set up earlier. Because in 2 or 3, there's this moment, I think 3, there's this moment where Miles says, hey, I wonder if there's one of me in your universe. And Peter says, oh, I don't know. And then at the very end, he does this, he thinks it too and goes, I wonder if there's a Miles Morales here. And then he's got this huge expression on his face when he Googles it. And then it says, and then it's over. And you're like, oh, no, who is he?
Yeah.
And I have a theory.
I was just gonna say too, it's gonna be interesting to see what they do with him because he's already appeared in 616 continuity technically.
What do you mean he's already appeared? Really?
He was in a panel. Spider-Man saved him in a panel in an issue of Amazing right around the time he first appeared.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did.
In Spider Island?
What was that? Sorry.
In Spider Island?
It wasn't. I don't know if it was in Spider Island, but I think it was in a slot issue. He was drawn holding Miles Morales.
Wow, I gotta go back and find that. I did not know that happened.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I hope it's not just something where he just finds out, oh, I saved this guy. Like, I hope it turns out he's like a supervillain or something.
Yeah, that also plays into what I was thinking about how this is gonna. I think this is gonna have possible major ramifications on the Amazing book. I don't know about Ultimate, but do you have anything else to say? Or
well, the only thing I was going to say is I didn't know about that panel. I assumed that if he shows up in 616, he'll be older.
Yeah, definitely.
That would be my guess. I don't think they should do him 13. I think he should be older, just like Peter Parker is.
Yeah, that would be cool.
But anyway, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just thinking about. I was really paying attention to Mysterio's dialogue in the first issue because he said something that kind of threw me for a loop in terms of what people have been speculating jokingly about what's going to happen with the cancellation of the book and stuff. He says that, and he's very specific about how he words this. He says, I missed out on you dying the first time. I'm not going to miss this time. And Peter Parker's like, what are you talking about? And then proceeds to, beat him up and doesn't really think anything about it. So we know that Mysterio, because he was in the Ultimate Universe before, knows that Ultimate Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and he knows now that 616 Peter Parker is also Spider-Man because he interacted with him here, and it confirmed that information. Yeah. So solicitations have come out for the issues of Amazing Spider-Man leading all the way up to 700 because they're going to announce what's going to happen in that issue in New York Comic Con. So up to like 699, they've announced that Dr. Octopus is somehow going to find out who Peter Parker really is.
And it'll probably be through
Mysterio. And Dan Slott's saying that he's doing this big thing to the character, and they're canceling the book and relaunching it possibly with a different adjective. And he leaves Alpha at the point in the end of the arc that just finished up where he made a mistake like Peter Parker. He was irresponsible with his powers, and he hasn't had the chance to redeem himself yet. So I think there's a possibility that might happen to Peter because Doc Ock figures out his identity, and someone might possibly take over.
Well, they can't kill him.
I hope not.
That would be the stupidest idea ever.
That would be really
stupid.
Just
did it in Ultimate, and they made such a big deal out of it when they did it in Ultimate.
Yeah.
That would be a really bad idea. I could see them doing another faked death, but man, they just did it with Thor, and they just did it with Bucky, like a year ago.
Yeah.
We don't need any more faked deaths in the Marvel Universe, especially after we killed off Human Torch and brought him back 6 months later. I would be okay with Peter Parker like disappearing for some reason and somebody else taking over for a while, but then that also ends up being too much like what they just did with Batman 2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and what they did with Captain America.
All that, yeah. I love the idea of making Miles Morales some big character in 616. I think it's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
I want that. I don't want some big giant new status quo for Spider-Man. We can't keep a status quo for more than 20 issues with that character.
Yeah, unless it's a, rehash of 70s status quo.
Yeah. But I mean, are you with me on that? Like, what they could do that I would actually like, especially because I don't like Alpha. I mean, I quit reading the book, and part of it was because I didn't like Alpha.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that's what I necessarily think is going to happen, but when I was just looking at all the clues there, I was like...
There's definitely a lot of setup, though.
Yeah, that's what I think maybe why this doesn't have as much story that than we would have liked is because maybe this is just sort of set up for things that are going to happen in both books later on. Maybe this is just the setup book, and then later on it's going to pay off. Who knows?
Well, my fear with it being a setup book like that, and hopefully they won't do this, would be that they've made it way too easy now to cross the two universes like a lot, and I don't think they should do that. I think doing it once was cool. I think if they start doing it a lot, it will really diminish the point of having these two universes. And a lot of people didn't want it in the first place. I mean, like they've gone this long without doing this.
Yeah, I'm not saying like cross over the two universes every so often or whatever, but just like the ramifications that this book has on both sides of the crossover here. This might just be set up for major status quo changes for both of them, based on what happens here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess we'll see. It would be really funny to me if it turned out that this book was a lot more important than anybody thought it was.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there are a lot of 616 readers that don't read Ultimate that didn't even touch this, and will probably be very confused when it turns out that when they find out all of a sudden, wait a minute, really, Mysterio was Mysterio in Ultimate, and that's he knows Peter. What?
Yeah. But doesn't that
what?
But doesn't that seem like something that would happen given the current climate of, the Spider-Man books right now? Like, Bendis is Marvel's, go-to guy for important things. So I feel like, anything he writes, they're going to definitely make important. And then Dan Slott's he knows Spider-Man continuity by the back of his hand, and he loves referencing things all the time in his work. So I can totally see him breaking that in and doing something with it,
Well, we haven't heard, and I know this has nothing to do with this book, we haven't heard yet who the new creative team will be when they relaunch Spider-Man, nor do we even know what the book will be called. And I would assume that they're not going to keep Slott on.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming as well.
Because, I mean, they're doing a lot of change-ups with Marvel now. Let me ask you this crazy question.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible... I mean, he's already been announced for other books. Is it possible that Bendis gets both?
Yeah, wouldn't it be really interesting if Pacelli and Bendis are the new creative team?
Well, I don't see how they could be and do Ultimate at the same time.
He's not drawing Ultimate right now. Marquez is doing it.
Oh, well, that's true.
And I've been actually liking his work a lot on the book recently.
I forgot all about that. Because, I'm sorry. Looking at Pacelli here, I totally forgot. Oh, yeah, Pacelli hasn't been writing that other. Okay, he hasn't been drawing that book.
Yeah.
It was nice to see her again here, man. If nothing else, I love this artwork.
Yeah, she's great. And I think she draws 616 Peter Parker really well.
Oh, yeah, I opened this up at the beginning when we first got this, and I was like, oh, this is actually really pretty.
Yeah.
And she draws webs kind of like McFarlane.
Oh, yeah, she does. Especially with 616 Peter Parker, more so than Miles when he was shooting the webs,
Yeah, and she had a distinctive style between the two.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Well, Dan, that's all I have to say. Would you on any level recommend this book? I'm thinking maybe I have to, just because it might turn out to be really important.
I think it's a worthwhile read for people who are invested in Ultimate and the 616 stuff, because it has a lot of cool scenes between the Ultimate characters, just for the novelty of it. Bendis, if anything, Bendis is one of the best dialogue guys in the business, and he writes some fantastic dialogue sequences in this book, and they really pay off a lot of things for fans of the Ultimate book. So I think it's worthwhile. It's a worthwhile read, at least for those things, if anything else. But I don't know if I can recommend it to people that just read Amazing unless it becomes extremely important, like I was speculating. So
I would almost argue that it could potentially be, and it's hard to know this because I've been reading Ultimate, but it could potentially be a good read for those people on a different level also, because I found myself getting a little bit impatient in places, being reminded of things I already knew from Ultimate, with the exception of MJ and some things like that, like I mentioned earlier. But like there were definitely places where I was like, okay, is this just is he trying really hard to like rope everybody in so that like people that haven't been paying attention to Ultimate like will be able to follow this? And so it might not be a bad thing to read to catch up a little bit with what the heck Miles Morales is.
Right. Yeah.
A little bit. Not that it tells you anything about his parents or his backstory or anything, but just like kind of the Ultimate universe up to this point. Because there were a whole lot of panels where it was making a really big deal out of, oh, and Peter Parker's dead. Like, we all know that. But, like, for Peter Parker, it's something he's got to piece together as it goes along. It's not until the beginning of the second issue where he says, wait a minute, am I dead?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It could work on that level for those folks. Like I said, I was disappointed just because I was expecting more plotting.
Yeah, me too. I expected something big and epic, because they were touting it as the Spider-Man 50th anniversary thing. You had the second issue cover with all of the villains on it. I was like, wow, they're going to bring in all the villains. They're going to fight them. That should be cool. And then it ended up being a Scarecrow-esque fear gas sequence with Mysterio. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. And as soon as we saw Mysterio, I went, oh no, it's going to be one of these, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Dan, thanks again for coming back to the vault.
Oh, no problem. It was a great time.
Come back with me next week. We'll talk about something else.
Definitely.
And everybody, thanks a lot for watching and listening to the Comic Book Vault. If there's anything you'd ever like to see me review on the Vault, single issues, trades, anything like that, feel free to donate or let me borrow things. And all you gotta do is send me a personal message first. Let me see if I've got it already. And you can send stuff to Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
And we'll see you next time.